The 1990s were a time of immense growth for the gaming industry. With the release of groundbreaking consoles like the SNES, PlayStation, and Nintendo 64, gaming just kept getting better. The decade was filled with iconic titles and the rise of new genres like first-person shooters and real-time strategy and survival horror. But it was also the era when RPGs became a force to be reckoned with, thanks to a ton of unforgettable games. Join us on a journey through time as we revisit some of the greatest RPGs of the 90s, focusing specifically on Japanese RPGs or JRPGs, which often featured epic storylines, memorable characters, and classic soundtracks. So let's get started! Panzer, Dragoon Saga. Panzer Dragoon Saga is an exceptional RPG that is often overlooked due to its limited release on the Sega Saturn in 1997. Despite of its exclusivity, the game stands out for its dark and immersive world, an innovative battle system, memorable characters, and an emotionally charged plotline that leaves players wanting more. The game's standout features also include a stunning soundtrack and top-notch voice work, which lend a unique flavor to the game's alien world. To this day, Panzer Dragoon Saga remains one of the most innovative and unforgettable Japanese RPGs of all time, leaving gamers wondering what the RPG landscape would look like if it had been more widely available upon release. Earthbound. Earthbound, a JRPG classic developed by Ape and HAL Laboratory. This quirky game has since become a cult classic, and for good reason. It boasts a unique and humorous story, charming characters, and an unforgettable soundtrack that has become a fan favorite. Earthbound's blend of turn-based combat and real-world settings, along with its self-aware and often absurd humor, has earned it a place in the hearts of many gamers. It's a game that truly stands the test of time and is worth playing today, even if you missed out on it during its original release. So don't miss the chance to experience one of the best JRPGs of the 90s and one of the greatest games of all time. Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride. Dragon Quest V is considered one of the best games in the Dragon Quest series. The game offers a unique experience by taking players through the protagonist's life story, from childhood to adulthood, and eventually becoming a parent. This game introduces a monster taming system that would later inspire games like Pokemon. In Dragon Quest V, players have the ability to capture and use monsters in battle, adding a whole new level of depth into the game. It's also worth noting that the game's narrative structure is one of its strongest aspects, telling a compelling story that spans across several decades. Dragon Quest V was not only ahead of its time, but it also served as an inspiration for many of the RPGs that followed. If you're a fan of classic RPGs, Dragon Quest V is an absolute must-play. Wild Arms. Released in 1996, Wild Arms was a true gem of the JRPG genre. This game stood out from the rest of the competition with its action-packed 3D battles, intriguing Wild West/sci-fi setting, and unforgettable characters. While it may not have gained the recognition it deserved due to the release of Final Fantasy VII just a few months later, the adventure of Rudy, Jack, and Cecilia through the slowly decaying world of Filgaia remains just as enjoyable now as it was back then. If you haven't had the chance to discover this franchise yet, now is the perfect time to dive into this classic of the 90s. Lunar, Silver Star Complete. Lunar is the quintessential example of a classic JRPG done right. It successfully captured the essence of adventure by immersing players in a fantastical world brimming with lovable characters. The romantic chemistry between Alex and Luna was especially heartwarming, and the translation work by Working Designs demonstrated a clear passion for excellence, filled with witty dialogue and pop culture nods. This level of care in localization was a rarity at the time, only recently matched by publishers like Atlus and Xseed. Lunar demonstrated that a simple story could still captivate an audience if the characters were compelling enough. The inclusion of a strategic turn-based battle system, fully voiced anime cutscenes, and a wealth of goodies in the collector's edition for the PlayStation version made for an exceptional package that still stands as a paragon of the genre to this day. Pokemon Red and Blue. In 1996, Pokemon was unleashed upon the world, and it became an instant cultural phenomenon that captured the hearts of millions. The first games, Red and Green, or Red and Blue in the West, were simple yet addictive, with players traveling across the Kanto region to collect and train a wide array of creatures called Pokemon. The game was a massive success and spawned an entire franchise, including an anime, trading cards, movies, and more. Over 2 decades later, the franchise is still going strong, with new games and spin-offs being released regularly. With the announcements of the upcoming remakes and new adventure, it's clear that the world will continue to be charmed by these lovable pocket monsters for many years to come. Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI, released in 1994, is often regarded as one of the most iconic JRPGs of all time. The game boasts a vast, intricate story that's widely recognized for its writing and characters, and features one of the largest and most diverse cast of playable party members in the series. In addition to its engaging narrative, Final Fantasy VI offers players an unprecedented degree of customization for each character, allowing for truly unique gameplay experiences. Its combat system is equally praised for its strategic depth and customization options. All of these elements combined make Final Fantasy VI a standout classic that continues to capture the hearts of RPG fans even to this day. Suikoden II. Suikoden II proved to be a worthy successor to the original game, with a compelling storyline, improved graphics, and a cast of characters that ooze charm and humor. Boasting over 100 party members, each with their own unique strengths, weaknesses, and personalities, Suikoden II is a veritable treasure trove for RPG fans seeking variety and depth. The game also features beautifully designed sprites and multiple endings, ensuring players will be revisiting the world of Suikoden II for a long time to come. It's no surprise that this game remains one of the most beloved and celebrated JRPGs of the 90s. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night revolutionized the Castlevania franchise, turning it into a non-linear platformer with multiple pathways and RPG elements. The game's gothic setting, reminiscent of Samus Aran's adventures in Metroid, made exploring Dracula's castle an unforgettable experience. Players could gain new abilities, powers, and equipment while fighting off hundreds of enemies, many of which dropped rare and precious items. However, the game's biggest surprise was the discovery of a second castle that was upside down. A secret that was kept hidden for months and left players in awe. To this day, Symphony of the Night remains a defining title of the genre and one of the greatest games ever made.
My body.
Then for the master, I'll...
Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger, released in 1995, is a JRPG that has truly stood the test of time. Developed by an all-star team including Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi and Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii. The game features time travel, iconic character designs by Akira Toriyama, and a massive sprawling adventure that spans multiple eras. But it's not just the game's grand scope that makes it stand out. Chrono Trigger introduced numerous features that would go on to influence countless games in the years that followed, from its multiple, intricately connected endings to its focus on character development and the interplay between party members. With memorable characters, a killer soundtrack, and a deep, rewarding combat system, Chrono Trigger remains an all-time classic and a must-play for any fan of the JRPG genre. Breath of Fire 3. Breath of Fire 3 may not be the most talked about game in this series, but it certainly deserves its spot on this list. While I personally prefer Breath of Fire 4, there's no denying that 3 has a special place in the hearts of many gamers. One of the highlights is its engaging narrative, full of memorable characters and an interesting world to explore. The game also introduced 3D environments to the franchise, a significant step forward in its visual design. Additionally, the jazzy soundtrack is an absolute delight to listen to, adding an extra layer of charm to an already captivating game. Final Fantasy Tactics. During the early days of PlayStation, Square experimented with various franchises and genres. Final Fantasy Tactics was a result of such experimentation, and it remains one of the company's greatest achievements in trying something new with their tentpole title. Created by the creator of Tactics Ogre, the game was a turn-based SRPG that incorporated jobs from numerous core titles. With the ability to master every job for every character, Tactics allowed for almost limitless strategy and player choice. The game also had a complex and intricate story that was realized with the help of the re-release on PSP, making Final Fantasy Tactics one of the best examples of the RPG genre even today. Tactics Ogre. Let us cling together. Tactics Ogre is a game that deserves more recognition than it received upon release. The original game on Super Famicom is a masterpiece that shaped the genre profoundly, and the game's re-release on PlayStation made it accessible to a wider audience. Developed by Quest, the game features a solid story, pristine graphics, and almost perfect gameplay. While the class system in Tactics Ogre is incredible, it falls just short of the same system in Final Fantasy Tactics. Nevertheless, Tactics Ogre is a classic that deserves to be played by anyone who loves tactical RPGs. Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross, the sequel to Chrono Trigger, may have lacked the iconic art style of Akira Toriyama, but it still managed to be a worthy successor to the original classic. Despite being released in Japan during 1999, it still counts as one of the best JRPGs of the 90s. One of its main strengths was its relatable story that dealt with the unfairness of life and the things we can and cannot control. The game also featured an impressive cast of characters, with each of them having their own unique backstory and motivations. Additionally, the game's use of a branching storyline and multiple endings made each playthrough a unique and engaging experience. And that's a wrap for our journey back to the 90s and the best JRPGs that defined the era. Don't forget to check out part 1 of our series if you haven't already. See you next time!